Hey everyone, I'm here to help you relax and drift off tonight. If you enjoy using these videos to fall asleep, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more calming content. Share where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I'd love to know. Now settle into a cozy spot, take a deep breath, and let's start unwinding together. In a quiet corner of a sleepy town where the past was never far from memory, Oliver Hale received an unexpected inheritance, a battered antique watch enclosed in a faded leather case. The letter that accompanied it was penned in an unfamiliar hand, reading only, "Keep this safe. It shows what is lost." Oliver had little idea what to make of these words. A man of logic and routine, he assumed it to be a family relic of sentimental value. Yet from the moment his fingers brushed over its cool, intricately engraved face, he sensed that the timepiece held secrets far beyond ordinary craftsmanship. Oliver's first encounter with the watch's strange nature occurred on an ordinary evening. While sitting by his window and idly checking the time, he noticed something odd. The hands of the watch halted for an extra beat, and the glass seemed to shimmer. In that fleeting pause, a series of images, brief, half-formed snapshots, flickered across the face. He saw a flash of a laughing child, the echo of whispered voices, and a solitary figure standing on a foggy street. Startled, he blinked and the images vanished, replaced once more by the steady march of seconds. Over the following days, Oliver grew increasingly fixated on these mysterious visions. At moments when he least expected it, a pause at the red light, a break in his daily routine, the watch would inexplicably freeze, unveiling fragments of a scene that he did not recognize as his own. They were stolen moments, tender glances between strangers, hidden embraces, and glimpses of heartbreak and regret. Unsure whether these were dreams, memories, or something altogether different, he began to document each occurrence in a worn journal. As Oliver's notes accumulated, patterns started to emerge. Some images hinted at personal histories, the bittersweet smile of a woman in an old photograph, the haunting eyes of a man who might have been a long-lost friend. Other visions bore the weight of unspoken grief, a father's farewell, a lover's last embrace. The watch, it seemed, was not merely an instrument for measuring time, but a repository of moments that had slipped away, hidden from the ordinary flow of life. Compelled to understand the nature of these images, Oliver began researching the watch's origins. Late evenings were spent poring over dusty archives in the town's library, seeking any mention of a timepiece said to steal or capture moments. In a neglected local manuscript, he discovered a legend. Once, a clockmaker of remarkable skill crafted a watch for a mysterious patron whose sorrow was so profound that time itself became tainted. The patron had wished to reclaim fragments of memories lost to regret and misfortune, but the curse that followed ensured that the watch would forever show those stolen moments, reminders of what could never be recaptured. Oliver's life began to change in subtle and unsettling ways. His once rational mind was increasingly drawn into the allure of the stolen moments. Night after night, as he sat in the quiet of his study, the watch would reveal new visions. He witnessed scenes of beauty, a spontaneous dance in a rain-soaked alley, a gentle smile shared over a cup of tea, and of despair, the final glance before parting, the silent tear on a faded letter. Each image was ephemeral, yet vivid enough to ignite emotions Oliver had long thought buried. He started to wonder if these moments were linked to his own life. Was the watch showing him opportunities he had missed, or lives he might have led? In one vision, he saw himself as a young man with a passion for art, standing before a canvas in a sunlit studio, a scene he vaguely recalled from childhood dreams. In another, he witnessed a conversation he had never had with his estranged brother, filled with unspoken apologies and the promise of reconciliation. The line between his own memories and those of strangers began to blur, leaving him both enchanted and tormented by the possibility that the watch was a window into an alternate tapestry of life. As weeks turned into months, Oliver's fascination with the watch grew into an obsession. He became increasingly isolated, neglecting work and friendships as he spent every spare moment fixated on the stolen fragments of time. Sleep became elusive. His nights were interrupted by vivid dreams in which the watch's hands spun wildly, and voices murmured cryptic warnings in a language older than memory. One chilly autumn evening, after an especially vivid vision of a tearful farewell in a rain-drenched city square, Oliver noticed something even more disconcerting. His own sense of time had begun to fray. Minutes felt like hours, and he found himself disoriented in familiar places. More alarmingly, fragments of his personal past, the very moments that defined him, began to fade at the edges. A cherished memory of his mother's laughter, a simple afternoon spent reading under a willow tree, a conversation with an old friend. Each detail was growing hazy, as if the watch were siphoning away pieces of his own life. In his journal, he scribbled frantically, "I fear that in watching these stolen moments, I am losing my own. Each glimpse into another's past leaves an echo in me, a void where my memories should be." The realization hit him with crushing clarity. The watch's gift was a curse. Its power to reveal hidden fragments of time came at a terrible cost: the erosion of his own lived experiences. Desperate for answers, Oliver sought out a reclusive historian known only as Madame Celeste, a woman reputed to have studied the obscure arts of memory and time. In a dimly lit parlor lined with ancient tomes and faded photographs, she listened to his tale with a grave expression. "The watch you possess," she intoned, "is a relic of an era when time was not linear, when moments could be captured and released like fireflies. It was forged with the intention of reclaiming what was lost, but in doing so, it steals from the owner. Every vision, every stolen moment you see is a fragment of life that will never be your own again." Madame Celeste explained that such objects were rare and dangerous. They belonged to a class of cursed artifacts known as the timekeepers. "They are seductive," she warned, "offering glimpses of beauty and regret, but they feed on the very essence of your being. To rid yourself of its power, you must make a choice. Reclaim what is rightfully yours, even if it means forsaking the allure of moments that never were." Armed with Madame Celeste's grim counsel, Oliver resolved to reclaim his stolen time. He embarked on a journey of introspection, revisiting the places and people that had once given him life. In long-forgotten corners of his hometown, he sought out faded photographs, handwritten letters, and the echoes of laughter that once warmed his heart. With each reclaimed memory, he hoped to stitch back the fabric of his identity, even as the watch continued to hum its silent, mesmerizing tune. Yet the watch was not so easily silenced. In the quiet solitude of his room, it pulsed with an almost living intensity, each tick a reminder of the moments it had pilfered. Late one night, as Oliver sat at his desk and painstakingly recorded fragments of his past, the watch began to vibrate. The hands jerked erratically, and before his widening eyes an image unfolded, a final scene from his childhood, one he had long thought lost. It was a memory of his father's gentle smile as he taught him to ride a wooden bicycle along a dusty lane. The vision was bittersweet, stirring in him a longing for the innocence that had slipped away. Torn between the desire to savor these memories and the need to preserve his own identity, Oliver grappled with a question that haunted him. Could he ever truly reclaim his life if every stolen moment was a reminder of what had been taken? The struggle became a battle within himself, a fight between embracing the beauty of lost time and resisting the seduction of an endless cascade of what-ifs. One day, while wandering through a forgotten part of the town, Oliver encountered a peculiar shop nestled in a narrow alleyway. Its sign, hand-painted in elegant script, read simply, "Moments and Memories." Drawn by an inexplicable pull, he entered and found himself surrounded by relics that whispered of bygone eras, old photographs, delicate lockets, and even other timepieces, each with its own tale of longing. The shop's proprietor, a wizened man with eyes that seemed to have seen centuries pass, regarded Oliver with quiet understanding. "I see you carry a heavy burden," he murmured, his voice soft as dust. "That watch, does it not sing to you of lives not lived?" The man explained that his establishment was dedicated to preserving memories that people wish they had, the stolen moments that life had taken from them. For Oliver, the temptation was overwhelming. Here were fragments of alternate lives, each a possibility, a glimpse of love lost, of chances taken, of futures that might have been. He spent hours in the shop, poring over old diaries and faded letters, imagining the lives behind each stolen moment. Yet with each new vision, the ache in his heart deepened. He realized that while the watch could show him the splendor of lives imagined, it could never return the time that was his own. Haunted by the relentless tug of the watch and tormented by the creeping erosion of his memories, Oliver reached a fateful crossroads. The only way to break the curse was to relinquish the power of the watch entirely, to cast it aside and risk the loss of all the stolen moments it had so carelessly captured. But the thought of parting with those mesmerizing glimpses, those ephemeral pieces of beauty and sorrow, was almost unbearable. In a final act of desperation, Oliver sought out Madame Celeste once more. In the quiet, candlelit room of her humble abode, she offered him a final piece of counsel. To restore what has been lost, you must sacrifice the allure of the stolen. Only by letting go of these illusory moments can you reclaim the life that is truly yours. With trembling hands and a heart heavy with resignation, Oliver made his decision. Under a moonlit sky, he returned to the place where he had first received the watch. In the silence of an abandoned courtyard, he held the timepiece aloft, its face still pulsing with the stolen visions. With a deep, shuddering breath, he whispered goodbye to the moments that had both enchanted and tormented him, and he cast the watch into a deep, ancient well, a fitting final resting place for a relic of such sorrow. In the days that followed, Oliver felt the slow but steady return of his own time. The haze of forgotten moments began to lift, replaced by a clarity that he had not experienced in years. Though traces of the stolen visions still lingered like echoes in his mind, they no longer held him captive. Instead, they served as gentle reminders of the beauty and pain inherent in a life fully lived. Oliver rekindled old friendships, revisited cherished haunts, and rediscovered the simple joys of daily existence. He found that in the act of letting go, he had made room for the present to flourish. The ache for what might have been transformed into gratitude for what was. And though he would sometimes feel a pang of loss for the mesmerizing alternate lives glimpsed in the watch's cruel mirror, he knew that the price of reclaiming his own memories was worth every sacrificed moment. Years later, as Oliver walked along a sun-dappled lane in the golden light of autumn, he recalled the long, tumultuous journey of rediscovery. The watch had been nothing more than a seductive illusion, a reminder that the allure of stolen moments, while bewitching, came at the cost of living in the now. His heart, once burdened by regret and haunted by echoes of other lives, now beat firmly in the present, enriched by every memory he had painstakingly reclaimed. In quiet moments, when the wind carried a familiar scent or a stray ray of sunlight sparked a long-forgotten recollection, Oliver smiled. He knew that time was not measured by the stolen fragments of what might have been, but by the authenticity of every precious, irreplaceable moment that he allowed himself to live. And so in the tapestry of his life, each memory, earned, lost, and ultimately reclaimed, became a testament to the truth that the most valuable treasure of all was not found in the seductive glow of a cursed watch, but in the simple, irreplaceable act of truly being present in the fleeting miracle of time. In a time when myths were as common as the stars in the night sky, there was whispered lore of a vessel unlike any other, a ship that defied gravity and sailed upon the turbulent seas of the heavens. Known in hushed circles as the Tempest vessel, it was said that only when the skies were roiled with the fury of unending storms would the ship emerge from the mists of legend. Its existence was recorded in tattered scrolls and passed down by weathered mariners and wandering bards alike, who claimed that the ship was forged from ancient timber, blessed by forgotten gods and rigged with enchanted sails that caught the winds of fate. No port or harbor could hold it, for it belonged solely to the stormy skies. In a coastal town of stone and salt, where the crashing of waves was the perpetual lullaby, a young man named Corin listened with rapt attention to the seafarers' tales spun by crackling fires at the tavern. The wind, ever fickle and moody, spoke in its own language to those who cared to listen. For Corin, each gust was a reminder of the boundless horizon and of a destiny that lay not upon the familiar docks, but among the roiling clouds. The legends of the Tempest vessel had ignited a fierce longing within him, a desire to see that marvel with his own eyes, to ride the tempest and learn the secrets of the skies. Every evening, as the sun sank into a sea of fiery red and violet, Corin would climb to the highest cliff overlooking the storm-tossed ocean. There he listened to the winds as if they might reveal a clue, a fleeting note of a horn, a far-off echo of a ship's creaking timbers. And on stormy nights when the heavens broke with torrential rain and lightning danced like mad spirits, the townsfolk whispered that the vessel had been seen, silhouetted against a raging sky, gliding silently over the tempest. One autumn night, when the wind howled with an almost human intensity and the clouds roiled like angry beasts, Corin experienced a vision that would forever alter the course of his life. As he slept in a humble room above his family's tavern, a dream overtook him, a dream of a great ship, its mast piercing the dark heavens, its sails billowing with supernatural light. In the dream, a spectral figure, a captain adorned in weathered finery and crowned by the glow of lightning, beckoned him forward with outstretched arms. The captain's eyes shimmered with both sorrow and promise, and his voice, carried on the wind, declared, "The sky is your sea, and your destiny awaits among the storm's embrace." When Corin awoke, his heart pounded with an inexplicable urgency. The dream left him with the sensation of salt and storm in his veins, and the conviction that he must leave behind the ordinary and seek out the extraordinary. Packing a small bag with a few treasured belongings, a faded map, a locket containing a portrait of his late mother, and a compass that had once belonged to his father, he set out before dawn, determined to follow the call of the storm. News of Corin's quest spread swiftly through the coastal town. Not everyone was willing to abandon the safety of land, but a few brave souls recognized the spark of destiny in his eyes. Among them was Marin, a resourceful navigator whose uncanny ability to read the skies and stars made her legend among fishermen. Bram, a burly ex-sailor whose strength was matched only by his loyalty and whose knowledge of ancient maritime lore ran deep, and Ellis, a quiet scholar with a penchant for deciphering old legends and an uncanny intuition for the supernatural. Each of these individuals carried their own scars and dreams. Marin had once lost her way at sea, only to be saved by an unearthly glow that led her to safe harbor. Bram, marked by a past of battles against both man and nature, sought redemption in the promise of a new beginning. And Elise, whose family had vanished under mysterious circumstances, believed that the Tempest vessel might hold answers to questions that no mortal shore could answer. Together they met at the harbor on a crisp morning, beneath a sky heavy with the promise of a brewing storm. Corin, with his earnest gaze and unwavering resolve, explained the vision that had haunted him. The group, united by a shared longing for something beyond the mundane, vowed to seek out the legendary ship and unravel the mystery of its existence. Days of restless waiting in the harbor stretched into weeks as dark clouds gathered over the endless expanse of the ocean. The crew's anticipation was palpable, and as the tempest finally broke upon the coast with a fury that shook the very foundations of their town, the impossible occurred. High above the crashing waves, amid swirling sheets of rain and bolts of searing lightning, there emerged a silhouette, a ship of magnificent stature, sailing through the sky as if the heavens were its endless ocean. The Tempest vessel was a sight of both beauty and terror. Its hull, built of gnarled wood and ancient iron, seemed to absorb the raw energy of the storm. Sails that glowed with an inner luminescence billowed like the wings of a great albatross, and the figurehead at the prow, a carving of a majestic sea god with eyes of molten gold, gleamed in the lightning's flash. The ship moved with a grace that belied the violence of the storm, as if it were born of the tempest itself and destined to roam the skies forever. With hearts pounding and eyes wide in disbelief, the crew watched as the vessel descended slowly toward the jagged cliffs near their town. They knew that this was the moment their lives would change irreversibly. It was time to abandon the familiar and step into the unknown. Under the relentless drumming of rain and the constant flash of lightning, the crew made their way along a precarious path up the cliffs. Each step was a battle against the elements, yet hope and resolve lent them strength. At the base of the cliffs, a natural ledge provided a hidden passage to the ship's side. With Bram's strength, they heaved themselves onto the weathered deck, its surface slick with salt and rain. As soon as they were aboard, the ship seemed to come alive. The deck beneath their feet vibrated with a rhythmic pulse, as though echoing the heartbeat of the storm. In the center of the main deck stood a grand helm carved with symbols of ancient seafaring lore, its wheel rotating slowly as if guided by an unseen hand. Marin's eyes filled with awe as she traced her fingers over the intricate carvings, feeling the pulse of magic within the wood. The air was thick with the scent of brine and something older, an aroma of forgotten dreams and lost time. Ellis, ever the scholar, whispered that the vessel was more than a mere ship. It was a living relic, a bridge between worlds. And as Corin gazed upward, he felt the unmistakable pull of destiny guiding him deeper into the mysteries of the ship. With the ship now airborne, the crew found themselves sailing high above turbulent seas of storm clouds. The world below was a swirling canvas of darkness and light, glimpses of distant lands, rugged coastlines, and the relentless churn of the ocean. Above them, the sky roared with the fury of 1,000 tempests, and yet aboard the vessel there was a strange calm, as if the ship was the eye of the storm. The crew set to work, each member assuming a role that felt as if it were predestined. Marin took the helm, her eyes scanning the heavens and reading the patterns in the lightning, while Bram manned the rigging, securing the enchanted sails that caught the wind like strands of pure destiny. Ellis pored over ancient charts and tattered manuscripts found in a secret compartment below deck, trying to decipher clues to the ship's origins. And Corin, his heart still aflame with the memory of his vision, led them forward into the unknown. As the hours turned to days, the boundaries between the mundane world and the realm of myth blurred. The crew witnessed wonders that defied logic. A sky illuminated by auroras in colors unseen, islands that floated like dreams amidst the storm clouds, and celestial creatures that danced in the tempest's embrace. Each sight was both breathtaking and haunting, leaving them with the feeling that they were part of a grand tapestry woven by forces beyond mortal ken. The voyage was not without its perils. As the ship sailed deeper into the heart of the storm, the very fabric of the sky began to twist and convulse. Sudden, violent gusts threatened to tear the vessel asunder, and torrents of rain obscured the stars that once served as their guide. The crew battled against not only the physical wrath of nature, but also the insidious whispers of doubt that crept into their minds. One night, as lightning split the heavens in jagged forks, the ship was caught in a vortex, a swirling maelstrom that seemed determined to devour it whole. The deck shuddered under the onslaught, and for a heartbeat, it appeared as though the Tempest vessel might succumb to the fury. Bram's muscular arms strained to secure the rigging, while Marin's steady voice called out orders over the howling wind. In that crucible of terror, Corin found himself face to face with the specter of his own fears, a vision of a future where his dreams were dashed against the rocks of despair. But in that moment of darkness, the enchanted ship revealed its true nature. A surge of brilliant light burst from the helm, enveloping the vessel in a protective aura. The storm's fury abated as if in deference, and for a few miraculous moments the ship sailed through a calm, a silent promise that hope could triumph over despair. It was then that the spectral captain from Corin's dream reappeared, his form shimmering with celestial light. With a nod of solemn approval, the captain vanished into the ether, leaving the crew with the unspoken understanding that their destiny was intertwined with the very essence of the storm. In the wake of the vortex, as the ship emerged into a calmer expanse of the sky, the crew discovered a hidden chamber deep within the vessel's bow, accessible only by a narrow passage concealed behind a tapestry of storm clouds and woven legends. The chamber was filled with relics of a bygone era. Ancient navigational instruments, faded maps depicting constellations long forgotten, and inscriptions that spoke of a covenant between earth and sky. Elis, with trembling reverence, began to decipher the cryptic messages etched into the stone walls. They told of a time when humanity first dared to reach for the heavens, of a sacred promise to the gods of the storm that those who embraced the fury of nature would be granted a glimpse of eternal wisdom. The text hinted that the Tempest vessel was not merely a ship, but a vessel of transformation, a means to shed the limitations of mortal existence and become one with the raw power of creation. As the crew absorbed these revelations, each felt a stirring in their soul, a quiet invitation to let go of the past and to embrace the uncertainty of the future. For Corin, the discovery was a validation of his deepest longings, a confirmation that his vision was not a mere dream, but a call to transcendence. With renewed purpose, the crew steered the Tempest vessel toward a horizon where the line between storm and serenity blurred into a tapestry of wonder. The skies, now imbued with an otherworldly glow, seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of the universe. Under Moran's careful guidance, the ship navigated through corridors of luminous clouds and cascading waterfalls of rain, each moment a vivid interplay between chaos and harmony. During these tranquil stretches, the crew shared stories of loss and hope. Bram recounted the battles he had fought on tempestuous seas, where every wave was a trial by fire. Ellis revealed fragments of his past, memories of a family lost to the merciless tides of fate, and the hope that had driven him to seek answers among the stars. Corin, ever the dreamer, spoke of the vision that had led him to this mystical journey, a vision of a captain whose eyes held the promise of redemption, and a ship that sailed not only through storms, but through the very depths of the human soul. The days bled into nights, and nights into an endless symphony of wind, water, and whispered incantations. The Tempest vessel, as if possessed by a spirit of its own, glided effortlessly through the ever-changing skies. It was in these moments of quiet reflection that each crew member came to understand that the true voyage was not one measured in miles or hours, but in the transformation of their inner worlds. A journey toward acceptance, renewal, and a profound connection with the forces that governed existence. As the storm began to wane and the turbulent skies softened into gentle hues of early dawn, The crew sensed that their journey was nearing a pivotal moment. The Tempest vessel descended toward a vast expanse of calm, where the clouds parted like curtains revealing a radiant tapestry of light. The air, now filled with the promise of renewal, carried the subtle fragrance of rain-washed earth and blossoming hope. In the quiet majesty of that new dawn, each member of the crew felt a bittersweet pang, a recognition that the voyage had forever altered them. The ship had become a crucible of transformation, its turbulent trials etched into their souls like sacred runes. They understood that while the Tempest vessel would continue its eternal journey through the stormy skies, their own paths were destined to diverge here, on the threshold of a new beginning. Corin, his eyes reflecting the golden light of a reborn day, gathered his companions upon the deck. With quiet determination, he spoke of the lessons learned, a reminder that while the storms of life could be fearsome and unyielding, they also carried the seeds of profound change. In embracing the tempest, they had discovered not only the courage to face the unknown, but also the strength to let go of the past and step boldly into the future. Years later, in the annals of coastal lore and among the murmurs of wandering sailors, the story of the Tempest vessel and its intrepid crew became a legend, a beacon of hope for those who dared to dream of a life unbound by earthly limitations. Some said that on stormy nights, if one listened closely to the roaring wind, they could hear the faint strains of a sea shanty carried on the air, a song of journeys, of loss and redemption, and of a ship that sailed through the sky as if propelled by the very heartbeat of the universe. For Corin, Bram, Marin, and Ellis, the journey had been more than a passage through turbulent skies. It had been an odyssey into the deepest recesses of their souls. The ship, with its enchanted sails and mystical helm, had given them a glimpse of what it meant to truly live. Unafraid to face the storm, knowing that every tempest carried within it the promise of rebirth. And so, as the Tempest vessel vanished once more into the swirling mists of legend, it left behind not just memories of a fantastical voyage, but an enduring truth that even in the midst of life's most violent storms, there exists the possibility of transformation, and that sometimes the only way to find your true course is to set sail into the unknown. In the outskirts of a forgotten town, where twilight clung to the edges of reality and shadows held secrets of a bygone era, there stood an old house. Its weathered facade and sagging eaves whispered of stories untold, a legacy of sorrow, mystery, and something far more unnerving. Locals spoke in hushed tones of its uncanny nature. They said that when the night deepened and the world fell silent, the walls themselves began to shift. No one ever saw it with the naked eye, at least not until sleep claimed the living. And those who awoke in the dead hours of morning found that nothing remained quite as it had been. Julian Marston never believed in superstition. A practical man, grounded in logic and reason, he prided himself on his skepticism. So when he received word of an unexpected inheritance, a sprawling, ivy-clad mansion on the edge of town, from a distant relative he'd never met, he accepted it with a mix of curiosity and resignation. The letter, written in elegant yet archaic script, warned little beyond stating that the property was his. Intrigued by the promise of solitude and the charm of antiquity, Julian decided to claim his inheritance, unaware of the house's secret. The mansion was a relic of another time, a labyrinthine structure of winding hallways, secret nooks, and faded portraits that watched over every room. Dust motes danced in beams of light through tall, narrow windows, and the silence was punctuated by creaks and sighs, as though the building itself were alive. Julian felt a chill when he first set foot inside, not because the house was cold, but because it exuded a presence that defied explanation. That first night, as Julian settled into one of the large canopied bedrooms, he tried to shake off the uneasy feeling that had accompanied him throughout the day. The bed was soft and inviting, the room quiet save for the low hum of wind outside. Exhausted from the journey, he drifted into a restless sleep. In the darkness, dreams took over. Vivid, surreal images of endless corridors, doors that opened to nothingness, and walls that seemed to breathe with a life of their own. He dreamed of chasing shadows down hallways that twisted impossibly, of hearing distant murmurs and soft, unplaceable laughter echoing in empty rooms. But even in his dreams, a deep sense of foreboding lingered, as if the house itself was trying to tell him something. When Julian awoke at dawn, disoriented and with fragments of strange memories clinging to him, he sensed that something was different. The air felt thicker, and a subtle disarray greeted him. A bookshelf that once stood against the far wall was now nestled by the window. At first, he dismissed it as a trick of sleep, but as he wandered the corridors, it became apparent that the house had altered its configuration during his slumber. The following days brought a disquieting revelation. Each night, as sleep overtook him, the layout of the house would change imperceptibly. One morning, Julian discovered a corridor that he was certain had not existed the day before. A narrow passageway lined with peculiar paintings whose subjects seemed to watch his every move. In another instance, the grand staircase, once central to the home, had been displaced, replaced by a spiral of darkened hallways that led to dead ends. Determined to understand what was happening, Julian began to map the house. Every evening before sleep claimed him, he would walk its halls with a notepad, marking landmarks and doorways. Yet every morning the lines he had drawn were rendered meaningless by subtle shifts. A door that had led to the library now opened into a parlor. A window that once framed the overgrown garden now faced a bleak, unfamiliar wall. The more he documented, the more he realized that the house was a living maze, rearranging itself as though it were reconfiguring its very identity. Haunted by his own bewilderment and desperate for answers, Julian sought refuge in the dusty archives of the mansion. Late one afternoon, while exploring the attic, he uncovered an old leather-bound diary tucked away in a forgotten trunk. The diary belonged to Eleanor Blackwood, a former occupant of the house whose entries spanned decades. Her elegant script was imbued with both melancholy and a desperate urgency. Eleanor wrote of a curse, a spectral phenomenon that had plagued the house for generations. According to her, the shifting walls were no random occurrence. They were manifestations of a restless spirit, a guardian of secrets, bound to the structure by ancient sorrow. She described how, long ago, the house was built upon land that held a terrible history, a massacre, a betrayal, a promise of retribution. The restless souls of those wronged had given the house a sentience, a desire to trap and transform the lives of those who dwelled within. Her final entry was a frantic scrawl of warnings. Beware the night, for when sleep takes you, the walls will shift, and with them, your destiny. The house craves to rewrite your story, to erase who you once were. Do not trust what you see, for in these corridors, nothing is permanent, and escape may be forever lost. Reading her words, Julian felt a chill that went beyond the cool air of the attic. Was it possible that his rational mind had overlooked the supernatural? And if so, what price might he be forced to pay? That night, Julian resolved to confront the phenomenon head-on. Armed with Eleanor's diary and his own makeshift map, he retreated to his bedroom with a plan: to record his experience as he slept, to capture any hint of the mysterious transformation. He set up an old tape recorder on a table near his bed and made sure every window and door was secured. As midnight crept in, Julian found himself slipping into the same surreal dreams of shifting corridors and silent whispers. This time, however, there was a startling clarity in his visions. In his dream, he wandered an endless maze, following a faint light that beckoned him deeper into the unknown. Each turn seemed to lead to a different version of the house, some grand and opulent, others dark and decaying. Faces of long-departed inhabitants appeared in the corners of his vision, their eyes filled with sorrow and accusation. At the peak of his dream, he encountered a figure, a woman in an antique gown, her face obscured by shadow. She raised a trembling hand and pointed down a narrow corridor. Her lips moved in a silent plea, and Julian felt an overwhelming urge to follow her. But as he stepped forward, the corridor dissolved into darkness, and he awoke with a start. Reviewing the tape recorder's static-ridden playback provided no concrete answers, only the distant, indistinct murmur of voices and a sound like walls creaking in slow, deliberate motion. The evidence was inconclusive, yet it affirmed one undeniable truth. The house was alive, its very structure subject to forces beyond mortal comprehension. In the days that followed, Julian became increasingly consumed by the enigma of the shifting walls. Sleep turned into a battleground where reason clashed with the inexplicable, and every night was a gamble with fate. The once practical man now found himself trapped in a cycle of relentless observation and fevered conjecture. He spent long hours poring over Eleanor's diary, seeking clues in her cryptic descriptions and half-forgotten legends. He cross-referenced local folklore, scouring libraries and dusty archives for any mention of the mansion's cursed history. Neighbors recalled eerie incidents, a family that vanished without a trace, odd lights seen in the windows at night, and an inexplicable feeling of being watched. The more Julian learned, the deeper his fixation grew. It was not just the physical changes that unnerved him, but the emotional transformation that seemed to accompany each shift. With every night's sleep, Julian felt fragments of his past self slipping away. Memories blurred, feelings muted. He began to question whether the house was not only rearranging its walls, but also rewriting the very fabric of his identity. Who was he if the house could erase parts of him like chalk from a blackboard? One particularly stormy night, when rain lashed at the windows and thunder roared in the distance, the house's transformations grew more frantic. Julian awoke to find that his carefully drawn maps now made no sense at all. Corridors twisted into impossible shapes, doorways led to rooms that defied gravity, and staircases spiraled into darkness without an end. In the oppressive silence punctuated by the storm, he felt a creeping terror that transcended rational fear. Unable to resist the urge to explore, Julian ventured out into the shifting labyrinth. The corridors were dark and labyrinthine, lit only by the erratic glow of lightning flashing through broken windows. Every step was accompanied by the disconcerting sound of wood creaking and walls groaning, as though the house itself were straining against some unseen force. As he wandered deeper into the maze, Julian came upon a vast chamber he did not recall mapping. At its center stood an ancient mirror, its surface rippling like water. Drawn to it, he approached and peered into the glass. What he saw was not his own reflection, but a montage of lives, faces filled with joy, sorrow, anger, and despair, all merging into one incomprehensible tapestry. For a fleeting moment, he recognized his own features in the crowd, only to have them dissolve into a myriad of unknown identities. The mirror, it seemed, was a portal into the very soul of the house, a repository of all that had passed through its corridors, every forgotten moment and every stolen memory. In the midst of this overwhelming surrealism, a voice called out to him, a soft, measured tone that resonated with authority and sadness. "You must not lose yourself," the voice intoned, echoing through the chamber. Julian turned and saw, standing in the shadows, a figure cloaked in a long, dark garment. Its face was obscured by a hood, but the eyes shone with an otherworldly light. "I am the keeper of this house," the figure declared in a calm yet mournful cadence. "I was once like you, a seeker of answers, a soul burdened by loss. but the house has a way of consuming all who dwell within it until even the memory of who you once were is erased. The keeper stepped forward, and as it did, the shifting walls of the chamber seemed to slow, as if paying reverence to this enigmatic presence. Julian's heart pounded in his chest. "Why does it do this?" he demanded. "Why must the walls shift? Why must you erase us?" The keeper's eyes glimmered with sorrow. This house is built on pain and memory, on the longing for redemption and the fear of forgetting. Each shift, each transformation, is a struggle, a battle between what was, what is, and what might be. It is not merely a curse, but a reflection of our deepest desires to change, to leave behind our failures, to start anew. But change comes at a cost. To open the door to a new self, you must close the door on the past. And once that door is closed, it can never be reopened. The keeper's words reverberated in Julian's mind as he slowly made his way back to the room he had once called his own. There, on an old writing desk, lay a letter addressed to him in a handwriting he recognized as his own, though it was decades old. A document from a past life he could barely remember. The letter spoke of regret, of mistakes made and opportunities lost. It was a confession, a farewell to the person he once was, and an invitation to embrace the transformation the house offered. For hours, Julian wrestled with the decision. Every fiber of his being yearned for renewal, a chance to leave behind the burdens of regret and sorrow. But at what cost? If he allowed the house to continue its nightly metamorphosis, he knew that pieces of his identity would vanish forever, replaced by a new self that might be free of past failures, but also devoid of the rich tapestry of his experiences. In the quiet pre-dawn hours, with the storm subsiding and the first light of morning peering through the warped windows, Julian made his choice. He would embrace the change, even if it meant relinquishing the fragments of his former self. He gathered the letter, folded it neatly, and placed it in a small wooden box he found in a forgotten drawer, a symbolic burial of the past. That morning, as the house settled into an uneasy calm, Julian felt an unfamiliar lightness. The oppressive weight of memory had lessened, replaced by a tentative hope. Yet even as he moved about the now familiar rooms, he could not shake the feeling that the house was watching him, its walls silently calculating the cost of his decision. Days turned into weeks, and Julian began to notice subtle shifts, not only in the structure of the house, but in himself. The nightmares lessened, replaced by dreams of possibility and quiet determination. He started to record his experiences in a new journal, not as a chronicle of horror, but as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Though he knew that every night would bring further transformations, further erasures of the past, he also recognized that the future lay open before him, a blank canvas waiting to be painted with hope. Years later, the mansion still stands, a monument to the strange interplay of memory, loss, and rebirth. Visitors come and go, some drawn by the allure of its haunted reputation, others seeking answers to their own inner turmoil. They whisper of a house where the walls shift when you sleep, where the past is laid to rest, and a new future is born every time the night falls. For those who choose to enter, the house offers both a curse and a gift, the chance to shed the burdens of yesterday, even as it erases the very memories that once defined them. And somewhere in the quiet heart of that shifting labyrinth, a man named Julian Marston continues to walk the corridors, embracing the endless dance of change. He is a living reminder that to change is to lose, but also to gain, a paradox as old as time itself. In the end, the house remains an enigma, a living puzzle whose pieces rearrange with each passing night. It stands as a testament to the eternal struggle between holding on and letting go, a place where every soul must decide what is worth remembering and what must be sacrificed in the pursuit of renewal. And so, Under the watchful eyes of shifting walls and in the silence of dreams, the house endures, a keeper of secrets, a guardian of transformation, and a beacon for those daring enough to sleep within its ever-changing embrace. In the depths of forgotten legends and the whispers of wind-strewn valleys, there exists a tale of a mystical portal, a gate shrouded in time and mystery, rumored to open for each soul only once. For generations, folk in remote hamlets and solitary wanderers have passed down the chilling warning. Once you cross that threshold, the portal will never welcome you again. This is the story of one such traveler and the irreversible moment that reshaped his destiny. In the hazy twilight of midsummer, when the line between reality and myth blurred like watercolors in the rain, old storytellers gathered around flickering fires. They recounted a tale of an ancient gate hidden deep within an enchanted forest, a gateway that appeared only when fate deemed it necessary. Local lore spoke of its ornate ironwork and the enigmatic runes that danced along its frame. It was said that the gate's magic was potent enough to rewrite destiny, to offer a single chance at renewal or escape. Yet the warning was unyielding. The gate never opened for the same person twice. For many, the story was a bedtime fable, a myth to be dismissed. For others, it was a challenge, a call to those desperate enough to alter the course of their lives. Among these seekers was a man named Elias Marlowe, whose heart was heavy with regret and whose soul craved redemption. Elias was a wanderer burdened by memories of a life riddled with missteps and unhealed sorrows. Haunted by a past he could neither escape nor forgive, he roamed from town to town, gathering fragments of lore and wisdom in a desperate bid to find solace. One chilly autumn evening, in a dimly lit tavern on the outskirts of a crumbling village, Elias overheard a hushed conversation about a gate that promised passage to a new beginning. The speaker, an enigmatic old woman with eyes like polished onyx, claimed that only once in a lifetime could one be granted passage through the gate, for its magic would not deign to repeat its mercy. That night, as rain pounded the cobblestones and the wind howled like a chorus of lost souls, Elias's resolve solidified. He would seek this fabled portal, convinced that its one-time opening might offer him the chance to leave behind a life defined by sorrow, a final opportunity to start anew. With little more than a few crumpled maps, whispered directions, and the insistent echo of the old woman's words, he set off toward the wild, untamed forest where the gate was said to dwell. The journey led Elias through landscapes as varied as they were treacherous. A labyrinth of moss-covered ruins, dense woodlands where the trees whispered secrets in forgotten tongues, and rugged highlands under a sky heavy with portent. Nights were spent huddled beneath star-scattered heavens, and days were consumed by the relentless pursuit of an elusive hope. In the depths of the forest, nature itself seemed to conspire with destiny. A faint, almost imperceptible glow beckoned him along a narrow path, winding between ancient oaks and silvered streams. The further he pressed on, the more the atmosphere shifted. The air grew thick with magic, and shadows began to assume shapes that mimicked faces of sorrow and longing. It was as if the forest remembered the countless souls who had passed before him, each step a silent testament to the irrevocable passage of time. One night, as a mist-laden moon cast eerie patterns on the forest floor, Elias found himself before a clearing. At its center stood a gate of wrought iron, its surface etched with intricate symbols that pulsed with a dim, ethereal light. The sight took his breath away. Here it was, the fabled threshold, silently awaiting its next visitor. The gate's design was otherworldly, twisting vines, celestial motifs, and archaic runes intertwined to form a masterpiece of both beauty and foreboding. As Elias approached, his heart pounded with a mixture of trepidation and hope. He could feel the ancient magic radiating from the gate, a force that seemed to resonate with every fiber of his being. The legends had spoken true. The air here was thick with the weight of past lives, of hopes dashed and destinies rewritten. His trembling hand reached out, hesitating just a moment before making contact with the cool, iron surface. In that instant, a surge of energy coursed through him. It was as if the gate were discerning his very essence, sifting through his memories, his regrets, his unspoken dreams. Images flashed before his eyes, moments of joy long buried under the weight of failure, faces of loved ones lost to time, and a vision of a future unburdened by the chains of sorrow. The sensations were overwhelming, a blend of pain and promise, loss and possibility. Yet just as the moment of catharsis began to take hold, a profound realization struck him. The gate's magic was singular. The legends were unequivocal. The portal would never open for the same soul twice. In that fleeting moment of revelation, Elias understood that if he chose to pass through, he would leave behind not only his past, but also the chance to ever return, to revisit that transformative moment again. In the quiet hum of the enchanted night, the gate's runes flared in a burst of radiant light. It was a silent summons, a final invitation that left no room for hesitation. With a deep, resolute breath, Elias stepped forward and passed through the threshold. The world around him dissolved into a maelstrom of light and shadow, and he felt himself falling into an abyss of shifting realities. Elias awoke in a realm both alien and familiar, a landscape bathed in the soft hues of twilight, where the boundary between dreams and reality was indistinguishable. The air was filled with a strange, harmonious melody that resonated with the pulse of the earth. As he struggled to rise, he noticed that the memories of his past life were beginning to blur, replaced by a sense of renewal that felt both exhilarating and profoundly disorienting. This new land was a place of second chances, a haven for those who had dared to cross the threshold. Its inhabitants, spectral and serene, moved with an unhurried grace, as if time had taken on a gentler cadence here. They greeted Elias with nods of quiet understanding, each face bearing the mark of someone who had once been bound by mortal constraints and had now been liberated by the gate's singular mercy. Yet amid the beauty and tranquility, an unspoken truth lingered, a bittersweet reminder of the price of passage. Elias soon learned that the very act of crossing came with an irrevocable sacrifice. In this strange new realm, memories of his former life faded like mist at dawn. The pain of regret was replaced by an ever-present serenity, but at the cost of forgetting the very lessons that had defined his journey. The gate, true to its legend, ensured that no soul could re-experience its transformative magic twice. Once crossed, the portal closed forever, sealing away the old self and the myriad of choices that had led to that defining moment. For Elias, the loss was profound. While he embraced the serenity of this new existence, there were moments when the void of forgotten memories left him with a haunting sense of loss, a longing for the man he once was, with all his pain, mistakes, and hard-won wisdom. The sacrifice was absolute, and though his new life offered healing, it came at the cost of the past. As seasons passed in this realm of eternal twilight, Elias began to notice subtle echoes that hinted at the life he had left behind. In the gentle murmur of the wind, in the fleeting reflections on still lakes, there were whispers of the person he used to be. These echoes did not bring back the memories in full, but they served as a quiet reminder that every choice, no matter how profound, leaves its mark upon the soul. In quiet moments of introspection, Elias encountered others who had also passed through the gate, a tapestry of souls, each carrying a fragment of a story that could never be retold. Some had embraced the new realm wholeheartedly, while others wandered its gentle landscapes in search of remnants of their lost past. Together, they formed a community bound by the singular truth of their transformation, that the gate, in its mysterious design, allowed each soul one irrevocable moment of metamorphosis. Late one evening, as the skies painted themselves in soft lavenders and dusky blues, Elias sat by a crystalline pond. The water, as still as a mirror, reflected not only his present form, but hinted at shadows of a former self. In that silent communion with nature, he came to understand that the gate's gift was both a blessing and a curse, a delicate balance between renewal and erasure. It offered liberation from the weight of past mistakes, but demanded that each soul leave behind the very memories that had once defined them. In time, Elias learned to navigate his new existence with a gentle acceptance of the inevitable loss. He began to see that the journey through the gate was not solely about erasing pain, but about allowing the past to rest while forging a path toward a future unburdened by old regrets. Though the memories of his past life grew dimmer with each passing day, they had not vanished entirely. Instead, they lingered as soft impressions, whispers of a life once lived, serving as silent guides in moments of uncertainty. The community of transformed souls formed quiet bonds of empathy. In shared moments of reflection, they spoke not of the gate itself, its mystery was too sacred, but of the price of second chances. They learned that every moment of transformation carried with it the weight of irreversible change. The gate, with its ancient magic, was not a doorway to reclaim lost glory or undo past mistakes. Rather, it was a final, solitary passage, a moment of metamorphosis that set one on an irrevocable path. As Elias walked along the winding trails of this surreal land, he came to cherish the small, transient joys of his new existence, the soft glow of twilight that never faded, the laughter of newfound friends who shared in quiet sorrow, and the ever-present hum of life that pulsed beneath the surface of things. These were his treasures now, imbued with the bittersweet knowledge that the gate would never welcome him again. Long after Elias's footsteps had become one with the paths of the enchanted realm, the legend of the gate persisted. It was whispered among travelers and dreamers, a timeless reminder that every soul is granted but one passage, one moment of irreversible transformation. The gate that never opens for the same person twice stood as a symbol of life's relentless progression, an emblem of change, loss, and the bittersweet beauty of moving forward. In distant lands beneath starlit skies and among ancient ruins, other seekers continued their quests, each hoping to catch a glimpse of the fabled portal. They knew that if they ever found it, that single chance would redefine their existence, carving away the old self and setting them upon a journey with no possibility of return. And so, the legend endured, etched into the hearts of those who dared to dream of renewal and whispered into the winds that carried the echoes of countless souls who had crossed that final threshold. For Elias, and for all who had ever dared to approach the gate, the lesson was clear. Every door in life opens but once. The chance to change, to escape, to find redemption comes at a price measured not in silver or gold, but in the irrevocable sacrifice of what once was. And in that sacrifice lies the eternal promise of a new beginning, even as the memory of the past slowly fades into the mists of time. Every year, when the frost of late autumn begins to bite and the long shadows of winter creep across the land, whispers spread among those who live on the fringes of memory. A town appears, shrouded in mist and mystery, emerging for one night only. Its name is lost to time, but its legend endures, carried on the lips of the old and those brave enough to listen. This is the story of that night when reality blurred into nightmare and the past reached out to ensnare the future. In a quiet village nestled amid ancient pines and rugged hills, Jonathan Morrow first heard the tale. An unassuming traveler with a taste for secrets and forgotten histories, He'd spent his life chasing legends, old wives' tales, whispered myths, and the half-remembered lore of haunted places. Over cups of bitter tea in creaking diners, he listened as locals recounted the eerie phenomenon. Once every year, on the eve of the winter solstice, a town materialized from the mists, visible only for a fleeting hour before vanishing as if it had never existed. The story was told in hushed tones, each retelling more chilling than the last. They spoke of its winding cobbled streets, gaslit windows, and an overwhelming air of despair. The townsfolk who appeared were said to be trapped souls, lost long ago, cursed to repeat their last tragic day in an endless loop. Jonathan's heart stirred with a mixture of dread and curiosity. Here was a mystery that defied reason, and he resolved to witness it with his own eyes. As the solstice approached, a pallid winter dusk enveloped the land. Jonathan's journey began on a narrow, winding road that cut through dense forests and frost-kissed meadows. The chill in the air grew with every mile, and an eerie stillness, as if nature itself were holding its breath, seemed to settle over the landscape. The local inn, a creaking relic of better days, had reluctantly agreed to shelter him for the night. Over a sparse dinner and a few murmured warnings from the innkeeper, who spoke of disappearances and lost wanderers, Jonathan felt the weight of foreboding. That night, restless dreams carried him through visions of ghostly figures and crumbling facades, until he awoke with the sensation that time itself was slipping away. At the stroke of midnight, when the sky was a deep, endless void, and the land lay silent beneath a shimmering blanket of frost, Jonathan stepped out into the cold. A dense fog rolled in from the valley, swallowing the familiar outlines of the road. It was then he saw it, a spectral glow on the horizon, like a mirage against the dark. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the outlines of buildings began to form. A town emerging from the mist, bathed in the pale light of an unseen moon. The town's architecture was anachronistic, a blend of crumbling Victorian facades and medieval stonework, all arranged in a labyrinth of narrow streets and hidden courtyards. The very air seemed charged with sorrow and forgotten memories. Jonathan's pulse quickened as he hesitated at the town's entrance. A massive archway wrought from twisted iron and ancient stone, its carvings depicting faces frozen in silent anguish. With little choice but to press onward, he stepped through the arch, feeling as though he were crossing a threshold into another realm, a world where the past and present intermingled in a dance of ghostly echoes. The moment Jonathan entered the town, he sensed that he was not alone. Figures moved silently along the streets, residents clad in attire that belonged to another century. Their eyes, dark and hollow, held secrets of pain and longing. They greeted him with nods and murmurs, their voices soft and spectral, as if speaking from a great distance. He soon encountered a woman named Evelyn, her presence both mournful and mesmerizing. With a face etched by time and sorrow, she explained in broken, halting sentences that the town was a relic of a forgotten curse. "We are bound to this night," she whispered, her voice trembling like a dying candle flame. "Once every year we return, lost souls condemned to relive our final hours. When the town vanishes, we remain trapped between worlds." Jonathan listened, spellbound by the tragedy unfolding before him. Each resident seemed to carry the weight of centuries, their stories intertwining like the threads of an ancient tapestry. As he wandered deeper into the town, he encountered fragments of their lives. A baker who once promised hope, now making bread with trembling hands. A school teacher reciting lessons to empty rooms. A family huddled together in silent despair. In a small chapel at the heart of the town, lit by flickering candles and shrouded in shadows, Jonathan discovered the true nature of the curse. The chapel's walls were adorned with faded frescoes, depicting a time of prosperity and joy. a stark contrast to the somber reality before him. In the center of the altar lay an ancient tome, its pages brittle with age and filled with cryptic symbols and dire warnings. An old priest, his eyes sunken yet burning with a fervor born of endless regret, explained the dark pact that had doomed the town. Centuries ago, in a desperate bid to save his people from a terrible famine, the town's founders had struck a bargain with an otherworldly entity. In exchange for sustenance and survival, they had promised their souls, a promise that had been fulfilled with a terrible price. Every year when the solstice came, the entity reclaimed its due, resurrecting the town and its inhabitants for one final night before dragging them back into an eternal, shadowy limbo. The priest's voice cracked as he recounted the horrors that befell those who attempted to escape the cycle. Once you enter, he warned, the town binds you. The hours grow longer, and the shadows darker. Escape is but an illusion, for the curse does not relent. His words echoed in the vaulted space, resonating with a finality that chilled Jonathan to his core. Time became a distorted tapestry as Jonathan roamed the spectral streets. The town's layout shifted with an unsettling fluidity. Alleys that once led to familiar squares now twisted into labyrinths with no exit. Every turn brought him face to face with the remnants of lives long lost. In one narrow lane, he witnessed a surreal tableau, a group of children, their eyes empty, reenacting a long-forgotten game, their laughter echoing with an otherworldly resonance. In another, an old couple sat by a decrepit fountain, silently weeping as water droplets shimmered like tears. The air grew colder still, and an oppressive silence descended, punctuated only by the occasional clank of a distant bell. Jonathan felt as though he were being watched from every corner. The whispers of the town's past became louder. Snatches of conversation, pleas for help, and fragments of a sorrowful hymn that seemed to reverberate in the very stones beneath his feet. As the night progressed, the supernatural energy in the town intensified. Shadows lengthened into grotesque shapes, and the flickering gas lights revealed glimpses of figures moving in impossible ways, phases of matter and time, as if the town existed outside the normal laws of nature. Jonathan's heart pounded in his chest as he realized that the boundary between the living and the dead was dissolving around him. Haunted by visions of calamities long past, Jonathan began to perceive the true horror of the town's history. In a forgotten alleyway, he discovered a series of murals etched into the crumbling walls. They told a story in macabre detail. A prosperous town brought low by greed and despair, its inhabitants sacrificing their very souls for fleeting salvation. The murals depicted scenes of a terrible fire that had consumed the town, of mass graves and anguished cries echoing through the night. One image in particular seared itself into his mind, a depiction of the entity itself, a formless void surrounded by twisting, tormented faces, reaching out with elongated claw-like tendrils. The artist's hand had captured a terror beyond mortal comprehension, a glimpse of the monstrous force that held the town in its grip. The very sight of it made Jonathan's blood run cold, as if the image were a curse in itself. In the midst of this horror, he encountered a young man named Caleb, who seemed less resigned than the others. Caleb's eyes burned with a desperate hope and a determination to break the cycle. He confided in Jonathan that he had been researching the town's secrets for years, poring over ancient records and forbidden texts in an effort to understand, and perhaps one day to end, the curse. Yet every answer he found only led to more questions, and every revelation seemed to tighten the noose around his soul. With the final hour of the solstice drawing near, panic began to grip Jonathan. He realized that if he did not escape soon, he would be doomed to join the legion of souls trapped in eternal night. Desperate, he and Caleb formed an uneasy alliance, scouring the winding streets for any sign of an exit or a clue that might lead them back to the realm of the living. Their frantic search took them deep into the hidden corners of the town, into long-abandoned houses where time had stood still, through silent graveyards overgrown with frost, and into subterranean passages whose walls whispered secrets of a bygone era. The very fabric of the town seemed to twist around them, as if the malevolent force behind the curse was actively working to keep them ensnared. In one harrowing moment, as they raced through a narrow passageway, the ground trembled and ancient doors slammed shut. The sound echoed like the final tolling of a death knell. Shadows surged forward, and spectral figures, their eyes ablaze with unearthly light, reached out with grasping hands. Caleb shouted a warning, and the two scrambled for cover, hearts pounding in terror as the relentless forces of the town closed in. Time, now a cruel adversary, seemed to slow to a crawl as the dreaded moment approached. The atmosphere grew dense, almost tangible, and every breath Jonathan took felt laden with the weight of 1,000 unspoken regrets. The clock was not just marking time, it was counting down the final moments before the town's inevitable dissolution, when the curse would seal its fate once more. In a desperate bid for freedom, Jonathan and Caleb found themselves at the edge of a great, ivy-covered wall. There, hidden behind an ancient oak whose gnarled branches reached toward the heavens like pleading hands, lay what appeared to be a rusted iron gate. This gate, however, was no ordinary exit. It pulsed with a strange, otherworldly energy, its surface etched with symbols that glowed faintly in the gloom. Caleb's voice trembled as he recalled an old legend. Only those who truly understood the town's sorrow and paid the ultimate price for its sins could pass through the gate. As the final minutes ticked away, the two men faced an agonizing decision: attempt to unlock the mystery of the gate and risk everything, or surrender to the fate of being yet another lost soul in the cursed cycle. With no other options, Jonathan reached out and pressed his hand against the cold metal. A surge of energy coursed through him, as if the gate were testing his resolve. The symbols flared with blinding light, and for a moment he saw visions of all who had come before, lives filled with hope, despair, and ultimately the inexorable pull of destiny. The ground shuddered beneath them, and in a cacophony of sound, a chorus of anguished wails and the final tolling of a spectral bell, the gate began to swing open. As the first rays of a reluctant dawn crept over the horizon, a blinding light enveloped Jonathan and Caleb. In that singular, transcendent moment, the boundaries between worlds dissolved. When Jonathan awoke, he found himself lying on a cold, lonely road, the first pale light of dawn glistening on dew-soaked grass. The spectral town had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the echo of a nightmare and the lingering chill of a memory too vivid to forget. Caleb was nowhere to be seen, and as Jonathan staggered to his feet, he could not tell if his heart was still pounding in fear or in wonder. Had it all been a dream, a cruel trick of the mind wrought by the isolation of winter nights? Or had he truly glimpsed a realm where time and fate were intertwined in a curse that defied the natural order? In the days that followed, Jonathan tried to piece together what had happened. He scoured old records, interviewed the few who remembered the legends, and even returned to the road where he had awakened, hoping for a sign that the town might reappear. But the town was like a phantom, a brief, terrible mirage that left only questions in its wake. Yet sometimes on cold, silent nights, when the wind whispered through barren trees and the moon hung heavy in the sky, Jonathan would feel a chill in his bones. A reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be unraveled. The cursed town, with its sorrowful residents and unyielding curse, had become a part of him, a spectral echo that would forever haunt his dreams. And so with each passing year as the solstice approached, a subtle dread would creep into his heart. For he knew that when the midnight hour came, somewhere beyond the veil of our world, the town would emerge once more, a gathering of lost souls bound by a fate that could neither be escaped nor forgotten. And perhaps in that fleeting moment, another traveler might cross its threshold, drawn by the irresistible allure of a place where time stood still and the past refused to die. In the end, the town remained a testament to the enduring power of legend, a place where sorrow and hope, despair and redemption danced a silent waltz through the corridors of time. And though it appeared but once a year, its impact was eternal, a haunting reminder that sometimes the greatest mysteries are those that reside within our very souls. In the quiet, mist-shrouded village of Ravenswood, nestled deep within a valley surrounded by ancient forests, there was a legend that had been passed down through generations. It spoke of a violin, its wood dark and polished, its strings shimmering like threads of moonlight. The violin was no ordinary instrument. It was said to have the power to summon the dead, to bring them back to life for one last dance. The villagers called it the violin of eternal echoes, and it was both revered and feared. For while the violin could grant a fleeting reunion with lost loved ones, it came with a price. Those who played it risked losing a piece of their own soul. The violin had been in the possession of the Ravenswood family for centuries, locked away in a glass case in the grand hall of their ancestral manor. It was played only once every generation, on the night of the winter solstice, when the veil between the living and the dead was at its thinnest. The Ravenswoods believed that the violin was a gift from the spirits, a way to honor their ancestors and keep their memories alive. But there were whispers among the villagers that the violin was cursed, that its music carried a darkness that could not be undone. The current keeper of the violin was a young woman named Evelyn Ravenswood. She had grown up hearing the stories of the violin's power, but she had never seen it played. Her father, the last to wield the instrument, had died when she was just a child, and the violin had remained silent ever since. Evelyn had always been fascinated by the violin, its dark beauty calling to her in ways she couldn't explain. But she had also been warned of its dangers, and she had vowed never to touch it. That all changed one cold winter's night. Evelyn was alone in the manor, the wind howling outside and the fire crackling in the hearth. She had been going through her father's old belongings, searching for something to distract her from the loneliness that had settled in her chest. And then she saw it, the violin, its case gleaming in the firelight. She approached it slowly, her heart pounding. The violin was even more beautiful up close, its wood smooth and warm to the touch. She reached out to open the case, her fingers trembling. And then she heard it, a soft, melodic note, as if the violin were calling to her. Evelyn hesitated. She knew the risks, knew the stories of those who had played the violin and never been the same. But she also knew the stories of those who had been reunited with lost loved ones, if only for a moment, and she was so tired of being alone. She took the violin from its case, its weight familiar in her hands. She tucked it under her chin, the bow hovering over the strings, and then she began to play. The music that filled the room was unlike anything Evelyn had ever heard. It was haunting and beautiful, a melody that seemed to come from somewhere deep within her soul. The air grew colder, the fire flickering as if in response to the music. And then slowly the room began to change. Shadows gathered in the corners, their shapes shifting and twisting. The air grew thick with the scent of roses and something else, something earthy, like freshly turned soil. And then from the shadows, figures began to emerge. They were the dead. Evelyn recognized them immediately. Her father, her mother, her grandparents, and others she had only seen in photographs. They were as they had been in life, their faces filled with warmth and love. But there was something different about them, something otherworldly. Their eyes glowed with a faint, ethereal light, and their movements were slow and deliberate, as if they were dancing to the music. Evelyn's heart swelled with joy as she played, the music flowing through her like a river. She watched as her parents danced together, their movements graceful and fluid. Her grandparents joined them, their laughter filling the room. And then her father turned to her, his eyes filled with love. "Evelyn," he said, his voice a whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You've done it. You've brought us back." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears as she continued to play. "I've missed you so much," she whispered. Her father smiled, his expression filled with a mixture of joy and sorrow. "We've missed you too, but this is only for a moment. The violin's power is fleeting." Evelyn's heart ached at the thought. "I don't want you to go." Her father's smile softened. "You must let us go, Evelyn. We are at peace. But you have a life to live. Don't waste it." And then, as the music reached its crescendo, the figures began to fade. Evelyn's parents, her grandparents, all of them dissolved into the shadows, their forms becoming faint and translucent. The room grew colder, the fire flickering as if in protest. And then, with a sound like a sigh, the music stopped. Evelyn stood alone in the grand hall, the violin still in her hands. The room was silent, the air heavy with the scent of roses and earth. She felt a profound sense of loss, but also a strange sense of peace. She had seen her family again, had felt their love and warmth, and though they were gone, she knew they were at peace. But as she placed the violin back in its case, she felt a coldness seep into her bones. The violin had taken something from her, a piece of her soul perhaps, or a fragment of her life force. She could feel it, a hollow emptiness that would never be filled. The violin was silent now, its surface gleaming in the firelight. Evelyn covered it with a cloth and locked the case, vowing never to play it again. But sometimes, late at night, she would hear a soft, melodic note, a sound that sent chills down her spine. And she would wonder if the violin was calling to her, waiting for her to play it once more. The violin that brings the dead to life for one last dance.